This presentation is going to be different probably from most of your presentations because there's going to be virtually nothing technical about it whatsoever, and it's going to be all involved with the human aspects of how do we as humans communicate and how can we learn to communicate better with humans, particularly humans that aren't like us. And that's going to be the whole point. And it's going to be some interesting things. How many of you love the message on your cell phone? Nobody, right?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, everybody loves it so much, you just call it up and listen to it all the time because it's just so friggin' good. No, most of us hate the way we sound, but if we don't like the way we sound, how do you think people listening to us like the way we sound?
I don't like to think about it.
Yeah, right. We usually don't want to go there, exactly. But the point is you know, if you don't like it yourself, but it's probably not conveying who you really are to somebody else either. So when I first started getting involved doing presentations, I kind of did what was on the two sides. I put people to sleep and I stunk. And I decided I needed to get better than that, because I have some big goals I want to accomplish, and I needed to be able to become a good speaker to do it. So I went and actually studied for 2 years with the coaches of the stars. The gentleman in the top center picture is a guy named Roger Love, and he's vocal coach for Selena Gomez. He was Michael Jackson's Earth, Wind & Fire, Chicago, Maroon 5, Eminem. That's the people I went and studied with. And what they taught me was how to communicate the way the entertainment industry communicates, which means put emotion in with the message, and guess what? When you go home, you never forget the message. But, you know, we're all a bunch of techs. I'm a geek too. You know, I said, okay, this sounds great, but, you know, it's like weird. You're talking weird stuff. Let me see some science that proves that this has got anything worth anything. And very interestingly, there is some very, very good science on it. And the science that's on it was essentially done with people who have seizures. And if they're very bad, they'll often go in and take out a little tissue of the brain. But to do that first, they put up these wired up with these high density electrodes. And then they got to wait a week or 2 or 3 for things to happen so they can record it all. The first one that's got the color pictures on it, they wired the people up and they played distinct sounds. And these high density wirings allow them to monitor the brain in real time versus fMRI, if you're into that kind of stuff, which is a much slower process. And they played different sounds to them. And what they found on the left side study was our brains process audio like they process visual. There's layers it goes through that processes individual pieces of it before it gets to the part of your brain that says you actually saw or heard something. And they saw that in the auditory system. There's individual neurons that fire based upon rising tones or falling tones or pitches, all individual neurons, and you don't even know you heard it yet. The one on the right-hand side was very interesting because we've all heard along the way that it's, you know, number 1 is body language for communication, number 2 is your tone and such for your talking, and number 3 is the words. Well, they've proven that the old research is wrong, and the new research shows your voice is the number 1 way people can pick up on your emotional state and cues and how you feel about them. So that's why voice is so important. I mean, if you're doing a webinar, you're 100% depending on your voice. If you're doing a live presentation, well, you get to put some, you know, body and such into it, but voice still is going to carry a lot of the scene. So what the science says is, what I'm going to be telling you actually really does work. The sounds will affect the brain, and obviously if you affect the brain, you're going to affect the person. I'm going to go through a kind of a methodology that's called emotional speaking. And emotional speaking really comes down to talking in a way that the person that you're speaking with, and it can be one, it can be an entire audience, that they get an emotional connection to you and feel as if you're talking with them, not that they're sitting in a lecture hall being talked at. And some of the ways we do this is, first off, human voices have different sounds for different emotions. when you think about it, can anybody think of what does happy sound like? Any ideas on happy?
Hey!
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, you went up in pitch a little bit, and if you're going to stay happy, it's like you go up in pitch and you go a little bit faster, and you got a lot of melody in your voice because I'm just so excited about learning and being able to present to you guys. So you can see just by changing your speed and pitch and pace, you can make a happy sound come across. People like happy people. It's a good thing to be able to do. Another important part of emotional speaking is that you need to use silence. Silence can actually be one of the most powerful communication techniques that you have, but it's also one that we tend to use the least. Another part of it is this, what I call MPP-TV. And no, it's not something you watch. MPP-TV is actually the 5 components that your voice is composed of. And M is melody. So how much melody do you have in your voice? P, pace. So do you go really, really fast or do you go really slow? Pitch. Is it a high-pitched voice or is it low-pitched voice? Or kind of just your bass pitch. Tone. Are you really edgy and gritty like a Louis Armstrong? Or are you like a Marilyn Monroe and all whispery and airy? This tone. And then volume. I think we understand volume quite well. And those 5 components of voice are what gives you the power to do the kind of communication that we're going to be talking about. Another thing that's super important to understand when you're communicating with other people is this concept that I refer to as the 3 degrees of interest. And 3 degrees of interest says that anybody at any time on any question will have varying amounts of interest in the subject. So this particular one's laid out in a, more of a company tech environment like we are, where you start out with the least amount of information thing you deal with is a user story. Not very complex, it's a story. It says, I want to be able to do X, Y, Z. Now, as we go and return it into requirements, how are we going to do it? Do we need to get an ETL partner in? What do we have to do? It becomes more complex, there's more information. We're mixing some tech into it, but it's still some story. And then when we get down to the code part, I mean, that's what we do. We implement, we make it happen. We live in the world of little tiny details because without them, we can't do our jobs. The problem is, when you go to communicate, you have to communicate at the level of the person you're communicating to. So when we go talk to other geeks and the foxes, it's usually real easy because, they're geeks, we're geeks, we all like the tech stuff. Communication goes wonderful. It's much harder when you're talking to that department head and trying to get the information you need from them. And that's what the bars on the side are showing you. If you're down in that user story area, you need to be talking in stories. You need to explain things in analogies and stories to them so they can answer, because if you just ask them, different things about their data, they probably don't know. But if you ask them in the method that they think about it in the business, they can tell you tons about it that you can get what you need out of. And conversely, if you're working in tech, obviously we shouldn't be telling a lot of stories in the code, and you shouldn't be putting a lot of tech in your user stories. So important to be on the exact same level to emotionally get that connection with people. Otherwise, you make them feel stupid. Vocal profiles. Vocal profiles are a way that you take that MPP-TV, so the 5 different components of voice, and it's showing you for each different kind of thing. And this is showing you for some different work areas, some different emotions. What is that mix of sounds that humans make that humans recognize as meaning this thing? And it's all done by just putting everything on a scale. I mean, volume goes from 0 of, or 1 at just whispering to 10 screaming your head off at a ball game. And same thing with the rest of them. So by using this type of methodology, you can figure out, oh, I want them to, feel surprised. Well, good. You look up surprised, figure out the sound of surprise, and you then mix those 5 components to make it. Breathing for speaking. So now we're actually going to step, instead of kind of some background on speaking, these are some techniques of things for you to actually learn so that you can be a better speaker. Breathing for speaking, and this is going to be, we're going to do a little exercise here all together. And the whole goal when we're breathing for speaking is we want to be using diaphragmatic breathing. So when I breathe, if I put my hand on my stomach and I breathe in, you can probably see my hand moves out. And when I breathe out, my hand's moving in. Sorry, you see, I don't know if I'm standing, I think I'm standing at an angle where you can probably see that. So the way you want it to work, if you're watching me as I talk, is I close my mouth, I take a breath, stomach comes out, fill it up like it's a balloon, but then as I'm talking, my stomach is continually coming in all the time that I'm talking. And before I run out of stroke and air, I got to stop, recharge, and now I got more juice to keep on going. So that is your accelerator pedal. That is where your volume is going to come from. That's where your projection is going to come from. And that's where your ability to talk for a 4-hour seminar is going to come from, is by learning to breathe correctly. And the best part about learning to do diaphragmatic breathing like that is it's also what they teach you in yoga and a lot of other things is the right way to breathe anyways. So it's not unique to speaking. It's just, actually as babies, that's how we breathed. Somewhere along the way, we all learned to do it bad. So just to try that, if you put your hand on your stomach and then breathe in, you should feel your hand move out. And if you're not letting it move out, then come on, let your gut out. We all know we all got guts. It's okay. And then just purse your lips and blow it out slowly. And all that time, you should feel your hand moving back in. And if you just practice it that way, you'll get it down to where it just becomes natural that that's how you breathe. So that is the big trick on breathing. Another trick on breathing is, as I said, when you breathe, shut your mouth, breathe in through your nose, and then continue talking. There's a number of reasons that we want to take and breathe in through our nose. And the reason that we want to breathe in through our nose, one is it makes us shut our mouths. So we now have to have a silence, an actual stop, a pause in there because we had to shut our mouth. Secondly, when you have your mouth shut, you can't go ah, and all those filler words. You're busy breathing. You can't talk with your mouth shut. And then the third thing is that gives the listener a pause to process what it is that you actually told them. Then the third and final thing in speaking is you need to have a continuous stream of air. And what that means is you'll often hear speakers, and this is where we're notorious in the tech world, we're really bad about it, where the speaker will start going and they'll just keep going and they'll keep going and they'll keep going, and then all of a sudden in the middle of a sentence they'll take a breath and then they have to all of a sudden not breathe again. And the breathing is just like at weird places and it breaks it up and there's no pattern to their speaking, and where they should have stopped they just blew through, and where they shouldn't have stopped they're taking a gasp because they ran out of air. That is because you don't have a steady supply of air while you're speaking, because you're not paying attention to those pauses when you should be taking your breaths.
Do you think in tech we just get stuck explaining stuff all the time?
What's that?
I feel like it's probably more than just tech. It's just like when you're explaining something or you like to hear yourself talk, you don't take enough breaks kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of... to tell you the truth, this is what I think happens. Nobody does it because they're trying to do something negative. Everybody does it because we know a lot of stuff and we want our clients to have that knowledge. Essentially, we're giving them too much in one dose is really the problem. But we feel like, the drive for all of us is to do a great job for the clients and, walk away with them feeling good about it. And we usually actually blow that because we dump too much, like you say. Another thing that's really important if you want to speak well, and this is particularly if you're going to do the Now Look ML Foundation 2-hour-long webinar, where your voice has to make it 2 hours with, nonstop, it's super important to warm up your voice. I mean, if you're going to go do a sport, you would warm up. If you're going to play an instrument, you'd warm up. If you're going to sing, you'd warm up. But for some reason, we think you can just walk in front of a microphone and talk for 2 hours straight, and that, life will be wonderful. Well, I don't know, who was it I was talking to? I don't know. Well, one of us that had just gotten off 2 hours and they could barely talk because their throat was so parched. And it was because they, A, didn't warm up, and then another thing we'll cover. So warming up, you see those words down the center, goog, gug, mum, nay, na, no? Those are actually warm-up words. And they're chosen very specifically. And the reason they're chosen is the amount of vocal cord and the amount of air that comes together at the exact same time. So goog has a little bit of usage of your voice. No has a lot. And they're used actually in a musical manner. You do goog, 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 goog. And you just do that. It's about 5–10 minutes of it. It not only warms your voice up, gets you ready to go, but it also gets all that puffiness and everything in your vocal cords gone, so that now you're not going to be going through with the poor gentleman on the right-hand side who has a fur ball in his throat, where you're talking and you know, trying to get something out, because you've already cleared everything out of your throat. But if you do get something stuck in your throat, guess what? There's a right way to do that too. You know, you can clear your throat by going, sounds really bad, or you can clear your throat by going, and swallowing. That's the best way to do it. Speaking secrets. So here's the things that we really want you to be doing to make you sound so much better. First off, over at the left, open your mouth all the way. If you're talking and you are talking with your mouth the way a lot of people do, where they don't open their mouth a lot and they have kind of their teeth and lips closed, then they don't come out very loud and they're hard to hear. It's like, this is a lot harder to hear and pick up than if I open my mouth. So open your mouth when you speak. Don't worry, it's what a human's supposed to do. Next one we're showing is, how many times have people told you when you do a presentation, smile? Well, guess what? Never smile while you're talking. There's a reason for it.
It shows weakness.
No. The total reason is it changes the sound of your voice. If you smile, in order to smile and make your corner of your mouth go wide, you have to close your mouth. So already from a nice resonant to all of a sudden I've started clipping off my voice. And then more, if you really smile a lot, it makes you go nasal, and then you could be a southerner and you come on down for some grit. So don't smile while you're don't smile while you're speaking. But here's where to put the smile in so that it works for you, because they're right. Smiling people respond to. Remember, you have to shut your mouth to breathe. Good. Shut your mouth, breathe in, smile, and continue talking and stop smiling. So just smile when you breathe. And that way they get their smile, but you get to sound good while you're speaking. Then another thing with speaking secrets is most of us don't talk loudly enough. We're a nation of whisperers, and everybody's trying hard thinking the electronics will make up for the fact that you're just not talking. So crank up the volume. Hey, come on, sound is vibration. You want somebody's body to feel that vibration, because now not only are they processing it in their head, they're processing it in their body. So you're getting them at a lot of different stages at the same point if you just crank it up a little. And you know what? Nobody ever tells you you're too loud. They always tell you they're not loud enough and they can't hear you. So last one, do we have any music people in the audience? No music? No? Well, if we had music people, they tell you that that is about what most tech workers sound like. And we at Looker, you as a group are much, much better than the average, trust me. But the average tech worker sounds a lot like that borrowed set of music looks like. It's the exact same note, and it's the exact same length on every single note at exactly the same tone. So if I were to go through the whole presentation and give it to you exactly like this, how long would you want to listen to me, even if it was something that was very interesting to you? Boring as shit. Another speaking secret. Never speak in repetitious patterns. You have a lot of people that when you listen to them speak, they have patterns to their speaking. Maybe they just always end every sentence by going down. So they get to the every end of the sentence and they go down. You know, today was a bad day and I had to do a lot of work and I'm going to get home late. I mean, you sound like Eeyore and you're complaining. I mean, even worse, People know after about the third one what you're going to sound like, so they tune you out. They say, hey, if I know what he sounds like, I know what Sheila is going to say. So you don't want your sound, your pattern, you don't want a repetitious pattern where they can imagine and guess where you're going. Then the most important thing here is punctuation. It's the road signs of communication. We kind of covered the pauses, the stops, why you want to do it. It lets the listener listen, think, process, gives you the chance to breathe. But just think of it that way. It's a yield and it's a stop sign. Hey, don't be the person that's standing there waiting for somebody to write your speaker tickets because you blew through every yield and stop. So what do you do when you have some presentation emergencies? Because we all know the world doesn't go perfect and crap goes wrong. One is, what if you're losing your voice? If you're losing your voice, the best thing that you can do is an exercise that's referred to as the yogi, which is why we have Yogi Bear up there. I don't know how many of you are old enough to remember Yogi Bear.
Oh, hey, boo-boo. Come on.
Yeah, you know, I mean, and then you could also take Rocky Balboa from the Rocky series, because Rocky and Yogi both sounded very similar. They were very deep and bassy and kind of sounded like, you know, nothing came out of the upper part of their head. It all came down, you know, hey, boo-boo, what do you want to do? If you do the googs, the gugs, using that low larynx, as they refer to it. So goo, 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 goo. Sounds stupid as shit, but what it will do is it will reduce the inflammation and swelling that has happened in your vocal cords that have made it so that you can't speak. So by doing that for about 4 or 5 minutes, I have seen speakers that were to the point that you could barely even hear them standing next to them, that they were back on stage 5 minutes later. Incredible technique. Good to remember. Next thing over is the poor person that has the parched throat. Hey, you know, halfway through the 2-hour webinar now, that one's a long one. And, you know, your parched throat, it's a damn desert in your throat. And there's 2 things you should do. One is, shut your mouth and breathe in through your nose, and that's going to do the best to eliminate it, and it's the only thing you can really do if it happens during your presentation. The other thing you should do to prepare for it is hydrate ahead of time. The saliva and the stuff, the mucus that lubricates your vocal cords are about the last thing that gets serviced. If you don't have enough water, it doesn't get it. It goes to stuff that keeps you alive. So be pre-hydrated and you'll have, you know, more of the things you need to keep from drying out. Next is, what happens when you're going and giving your presentation and your train of thought crashes? I think we've all had this one. Well, there's a couple things to do. First thing to do is, when the train of thought crashes, is look down and pray. But I'm not actually joking too much. The prayer part is optional. The look down part, though, there's a reason. If you look to either side because you don't know where the heck you're going, so you're not looking at the camera or the people all of a sudden, everybody thinks there's somebody coming up and you're looking at something. And it's distracting. But if you just look down, everybody goes, oh, he's just going, or she's just going introspective, thinking about how to say the next thing. And it buys you the time to get yourself back on track. And secondly, you should have a printed copy of your presentation sitting right with you, so when you go off track, you can always look at it to get back on track if you have to. So using those 2 techniques together. And the funny part is you can actually do about a 15 to 30 second pause, looking down, saying nothing, and everybody's just going along with you. If, wow, something good's coming up. It doesn't seem it when you're doing it, but what everybody will tell you was, no, you barely even stopped. Then the last thing that we all know goes wrong is, you know, the projector goes out, the laptop gets kicked over, you know, that's it. We lose all our visuals. Always have a printed copy of your presentation, because if you have to, you can pull the printed copy, work from it, kind of draw things in the air with your hand, but hey, the show goes on. A couple thoughts just to throw in when you're doing presentations. Who is the expert when you're doing a presentation?
Me.
You got it. So why is it in so many presentations do we make the PowerPoint slides the expert?
Yeah.
If you take and put every description of everything that you're going to talk about on the PowerPoint slides, A, you're redundant, And B, you've taken all of your expertise away from yourself and you've made the slides the expert. You should be the expert explaining the concepts on the slides. The slides shouldn't explain the concepts by themselves. Two decks, a deck to present from and a deck to send them home with, is a great approach. But always remember, you're the expert. Don't let your presentation become the expert because it makes it very difficult for you to control where it's going. Another thing is don't data dump. We all want to do that. That's what you were mentioning, Andy, is, we all know a lot. We want to help our customers as much as we do. And we just go and dump the whole load on them in one batch. Don't do that. Just be aware. How long did it take you to learn those things? You're not going to teach them that fast. Don't kill them. And then the last one is, for some reason, people seem to think that you're paid by the number of words you can stuff in per minute in the presentation. Well, you're not paid that way. You're just paid for the presentation. So how many words you put in, how few words you put in makes no difference. The important part is put in the right number of words to connect, and stuffing too much in is never the right number. Practice. Tips just to practice, and then we wrap up. Use a timer when you practice. Because if you don't use a timer, you won't know how long pieces take and you don't know how to adjust your presentation. Write down different sections. So as you're going through your presentation, put down here's the 10-minute mark, here's the 15-minute mark, here's the 20-minute mark. And then when you're giving the presentation, you can tell if you need to speed up or slow down well before you're at the 5-minute to the end mark where you all of a sudden have to drop 15 pages in 5 minutes. So get your times. Record it and listen to it. Again, if you don't like listening to yourself, then that's telling you there's things to work on. Then, as far as memorizing it, here's 3 crazy approaches to memorizing it, because we all hate memorizing presentations, is do it as if you're in different scenarios. Remember when you had the first date with somebody and you were a teenager and it was like you talked super quiet and you only wanted them to hear because, this is like magic super stuff? Go through your whole presentation like that. Go through your whole presentation like Italians talking, of just going really fast and your hands flying and just get through as quick as you can get through it. And present it like you're presenting to a 6-year-old. And if you do it all those different styles, what happens is it gets in your molecules and becomes part of you. And now the presentation's easy to give. It's just part of you. There you go. You're all saved.